Vienna. Tuesday afternoon. A tourist pays 16 euros, walks through a Baroque palace, buys a pretzel from a cart outside, and stands in front of a cracked iron spearhead behind half-inch glass. I've looked at the footage of that display case more times than I should admit. Nobody is fighting over it. Nobody is posting guards. The card next to it gives 4 names for the same object: its weight, its length, 50.7 centimeters, 968 grams. I have read more significant ingredient lists. This is the most fought-over relic in Western history. I spent 3 weeks trying to close this file. I could not. Charlemagne carried it through 47 campaigns. A French peasant excavated it from the floor of a cathedral in Antioch, while 15,000 Crusaders were slowly starving to death. Surrounded by a Muslim army 3 times their size, and the day after they marched out with it at the front of the column, they destroyed that army completely. Adolf Hitler moved it across Europe on an armored train. In January 2003, a British metallurgist named Dr. Robert Feather was finally permitted to test it. X-ray diffraction, fluorescence analysis. The results were definitive. The spear body dates to the 7th century, 600 years after the Crucifixion. Case closed. The legend was a medieval fabrication. I thought that would be the end of it. It was not. The nail inside the spear told a different story. The entire legend of the Holy Lance rests on a single sentence in a single gospel. Matthew does not mention a spear. Mark does not mention a spear. Luke does not mention a spear. Only John, chapter 19, verses 33 and 34, records that a Roman soldier approached the cross, found Jesus already dead, and thrust a spear into his side. Blood and water flowed out. The soldier walked away. He is unnamed. His rank is unknown. The weapon is not described. That is the complete biblical record of the most venerated weapon in Christian history. For the next 540 years, the spear is unaccounted for. The soldier's name, Longinus, appears nowhere in those 4 canonical Gospels. It appears in an apocryphal text written 300 years after the fact, a literary invention. This miracle, entirely unverifiable, is what transformed a Roman soldier's tool into a sacred object worth dying for. I keep coming back to that gap. 540 years, no chain of custody, no documentation, just silence. And then suddenly an emperor is carrying it into battle. The Vienna Lance is not a single artifact from a single moment. It is a palimpsest, layers of human ambition pressed onto the same cracked iron blade across 4 centuries, gold covering silver covering iron, each emperor adding his layer to something he needed to be real. At the center of all of it, a nail, hammered through the blade, held in place by a gold inscription that declares its holiness. Lancia et clavis Domini, the lance and nail of the Lord. There are 4 artifacts in the world currently claiming to be the Holy Lance. 1 in Vienna, 1 in the Vatican, 1 in Krakow, 1 in Echmiadzin, Armenia. The Catholic Church has never verified any of them. The question I could not stop asking was not whether this spear is real. It was why it worked, whether it was real or not. It entered the imperial tradition of the Holy Roman Empire and stayed there for 900 years. 14 emperors, 1 weapon, every man who held it won, until he lost it. Charlemagne took it on 47 campaigns and lost not one. He dropped it crossing a stream and died 3 days later. Frederick Barbarossa drowned in a river in 1190 while it was in his possession. The pattern is too consistent to be coincidence and too irregular to be law. I have tried to explain it both ways. I cannot. This is where I almost stopped looking. I wish I had. In the spring of 1098, the First Crusade was failing. 15,000 Crusaders had taken Antioch after an 8-month siege, and within days, a relief army of 75,000 men had surrounded them. They had been without adequate food for 12 days. Men were slaughtering their horses to survive. A French peasant named Peter Bartholomew announced that St. Andrew had appeared to him in a vision. The saint had shown him where the lance was buried, directly beneath the cathedral of St. Peter in Antioch. The nobles were not convinced. The eyewitness chronicler Raymond of Aguilera captured their position precisely. They would never believe that God would speak to a man of this sort and overlook bishops and princes and reveal himself to a rustic man. They dug anyway. By evening, most had given up and left. Peter Bartholomew climbed down into the pit in his bare feet and continued alone. And then the iron came up through the earth. On June 28, 1098, 18 days after the discovery, the Crusader army marched out through the gates of Antioch toward the Muslim encampment on the plains below. They were outnumbered 5-1. They were starving. The weapon was at the front of the column. Kerboga's army broke. The Crusaders won a victory that should not have been possible by any military calculation available. I have read the chronicle accounts 3 times looking for the alternative explanation. There is not a clean one. Peter Bartholomew's response to his accusers was to propose a trial by fire. 2 walls of burning olive wood were constructed on the outskirts of the Crusader camp, 12 feet long each, with a narrow corridor between them. On April 8, 1099, Peter Bartholomew stripped to his shirt, took the lance in both hands, and walked through. He was burned. He died 12 days later. He was either the greatest fraud in Crusade history, or he was believed enough to die for it. Then comes the part that should not be funny. It is. In that year, Ottoman Sultan Bayezid II sent a holy relic to Pope Innocent VIII in Rome. The gift was not piety, it was politics. Bayezid needed to keep his imprisoned brother locked up in Rome under papal custody. The lance was the bribe. The Pope's own chronicler noted, in the same account, that rival holy lances already existed in 3 other cities. He did not say the Pope doubted it. He did not need to. The most sacred object in Christendom arrived in Rome as a prison key, and the Pope knew it. The lance's power was never in its authenticity. It was in the institutional need for it to be authentic. An Ottoman Sultan understood this perfectly, because the alternative, acknowledging the doubt, was worse than the lie. On October 13, 1938, 8 months after the Anschluss, Hitler had the Vienna Lance loaded onto an armored train and transported to Nuremberg. The move was a deliberate act of propaganda, a statement of historical continuity, the 1,000-year Reich inheriting the mantle of the 1,000-year empire. Most people know the version Trevor Ravenscroft told in his 1973 book, The Spear of Destiny, that Hitler was consumed from 1909 onward by a supernatural obsession with the lance, that the entire Third Reich was built around possessing it. The scholar Jocelyn Godwin called it a blood-curdling work of historical reinvention. Archival records contain no substantiated evidence of any of it, no diary entry, no documented speech, no testimony from his inner circle. The legend, was written in 1973. The real story was written in sandstone, underground. On March 31, 1945, Mayor Willy Liebel had the imperial regalia sealed into copper containers and carried into a vault beneath Nuremberg Castle, cut directly into sandstone rock 80 feet below the surface, sealed behind masonry. Liebel committed suicide weeks later. He took the vault's location with him. The army assigned a lieutenant named Walter William Horn to find it. Horn had been born in Baden, Germany. He had fled the Nazis in 1934. Become a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, and was now standing in the ruins of the city he had left, wearing an American uniform. He interrogated 21 prisoners before one elderly private named Fritz Huber gave him the lead, after Horn offered him a cigarette, a cup of coffee, and a single question. "Are you interested in art and antiques?" On August 7, 1945, Horn opened the vault. The lance was on a red velvet pillow, inside a leather case, exactly where Mayor Liebel had left it. 129 days, recovered by precisely the kind of man the Third Reich had been built to erase. On January 4, 1946, the imperial regalia were escorted by plane back to the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna. It went back behind the glass. In 1914, Montaigne University in Leoben had already concluded the lance dates to approximately 750 to 800, Carolingian manufacture, medieval, not the 1st century, the 8th. The question appeared settled. It stayed closed for 89 years. In January of 2003, Dr. Robert Feather deployed X-ray diffraction analysis on the spear body, a dating technique precise enough to distinguish centuries. The result confirmed Montan. 7th century, 600 years separate this weapon from the hill at Golgotha. I thought that was it. Feather kept going. He turned to fluorescence analysis. He was not looking for age. He was looking for something else. Blood, DNA, any biological trace consistent with the lance having pierced a human body. The Gospel of John records it. Blood and water flowed from the wound. The result came back. 0. No biological material of any kind. The surface of this blade has been touched by the hands of 14 emperors, carried through 47 military campaigns, and venerated by more human beings than any object in Western history. In 2003, a metallurgist found less biological material on it than you would find on a door handle in the museum lobby. For 2,000 years, Christians venerated a spear stained by the blood of God. In 2003, a metallurgist found it clean. Then, Feather examined the nail. The iron nail hammered through the center of the blade, framed by the gold inscription, Lancia et clavis Domini, the lance and nail of the Lord, present since at least the 10th century, age unknown. Feather examined it separately. Different X-ray angle, different diffraction pattern. His finding: the nail is consistent in length, in shape, and in iron composition with a 1st century Roman nail, not 7th century. A nail whose physical characteristics match the manufacturing standards of Roman ironwork from the period of the Crucifixion. Inside a medieval forgery, a component that may be genuinely ancient. That is when I knew I was not going to be able to close this out cleanly. 2 years later, in 2005, the Vienna Institute for Archaeological Science published its own study. Lead researcher Mayhofer's conclusion directly contradicts Feather. The nail is composed of the same iron alloy as the spear body. Same metal, same period, not Roman. 7th century, like everything else. 2 peer-reviewed studies, the same weapon, opposite verdicts. Feather: the nail is Roman. Mayhofer: the nail is medieval. Both researchers are credentialed. Both methodologies are sound. No third study has settled the question. The gap is 600 years. The scientists cannot agree on which one this is. The science is the easy part. The Kunsthistorisches Museum has made no claim of authenticity. No independent testing has been requested or funded since 2003. 2 contradictory peer-reviewed conclusions sit in the same institution, and the museum has not commissioned the research to resolve them. That is not an oversight. That is a decision. The Vatican holds its own claimed fragment. It has never been submitted to independent analysis. The institution that has carried the crucifixion's material legacy for 2,000 years has quietly declined to subject even one of its 4 claimed lances to the scrutiny Robert Feather applied in a single afternoon. They do not need to. The power of the relic does not depend on its authenticity being confirmed. It depends on the question never being fully closed. That is why they stay quiet. I went into this looking for a clean debunk. 7th century spear, no blood, case closed. Instead, I found a nail that 2 qualified scientists cannot agree on, sitting inside an artifact that 14 emperors built their claim to power around, and 2 institutions that have every reason to resolve the question and have specifically chosen not to. The lance's power was never in the iron. It was in what men were willing to do for what they believed the iron meant. Peter Bartholomew walked into fire for it. Mayor Willie Liebel died rather than reveal where it was hidden. It did not need to be real. It just needed to be believed. That power has not diminished. You can see it in the museum's silence. You can see it in the Vatican's. The one component that might actually be Roman is the one detail 14 centuries of coverage ignored. If you have made it this far, you know already why this bothered me enough to spend this long on it. Drop in the comments. If science has confirmed this lance cannot be the weapon from Golgotha, why is the one object that might actually be Roman the one thing nobody talks about? And why have 2 institutions with the means to settle the question specifically chosen not to. If you want to follow where this kind of evidence leads, objects that science can partially date but not fully explain, institutions that know more than they are saying, subscribe. That is the pattern we keep finding. This one will not be the last.